So I go by Amber. It's my middle name. So my whole name is Elizabeth Amber Love Delaney. It's very confusing and confuses literally everybody. So I just usually say Amber Love for short. So when you see my name on books, it's some variation thereof. And I write mysteries or anything pretty much involving crime fiction, from very silly stories about my cats solving crimes in the backyard, like who killed the blue jay, or why is that deer limping, to more serious like serial killer type vibes. And as you can see, I'm a member of Sisters in Crime, so I've been a member there for many years. And what I'm here to talk to you about today, and you're welcome to just ask any questions at any time, but we're here to talk about how we deal with writing with violence in a world filled with violence. So I did poll some of my other writer friends and find out what their takes were. And mine are usually not graphic to the point of, like I usually reference TV shows. If you think about things like, I remember there were episodes of Bones that I had to stop watching because it was just like, very gross. In my series, The Fairweather Mysteries, Fairweathers is my character. She becomes a massage therapist. That's where the stories kick off. She loses her job. She starts this whole new career. That did happen to me. And I got a very different, unique relationship with bodies after studying massage therapy and yoga. I can have that distance somewhat of looking at things more medically. At the same time, even medical examiners should be approaching things with compassion. And again, that brings in a lot of my yoga world, where I'm sure I'm not the only one, but broke down crying over a chipmunk in my driveway. So, because, one of the neighbors ran him over. I was just like, that was my chipmunk. And so there are some times that we can deal with violence as inspiration. If you're looking for a story idea, ripped from the headlines is not a joke. It's very easily done. So if you are inundated with the true crime documentaries, whether you have the ID channel or if you like Netflix documentaries and stuff, that true crime stuff is sometimes weirder than anything we could write. Like the mom who literally catfished her own daughter, and it's tragic, but it's like, why would you? But it's a clear mental illness, somebody who needs that much attention that she would send her own child to the brink like that. There are these true stories that just seem outlandish, but they're real. So the stuff that we write, like my horror slasher mystery, has a character who dresses up like a character from, it's very inspired by the legend that is Stephen King of what would happen if he died and somebody went around dressing up as one of his characters, killing people, like that crazy clown type of trope. So mine's a scarecrow. And somebody's running around town killing people dressed as this iconic scarecrow. And that's the story where I have my heroine is 70 years old and is just like, that was my husband's iconic character. This is not okay, So she ends up embroiled into this serial killer crime. But that's not that crazy when you think about it. People do dress up when they commit crimes, or they leave weird signatures behind. All of these documentaries talk about the happy face killer and things like that. So how you can address it is making it cozy style, which is where you don't put the graphic stuff in. So that's what helps things define a cozy mystery. And then you have the thrillers, where there's so much suspense and you can be more graphic. You can really get into the psychology. If you know of Dr. Catherine Ramsland, she Her nonfiction books are incredible. She's an actual psychologist who has studied serial killers. She actually wrote a book on the BTK killer, and by interviewing him. Like, she ended up having a working relationship with this man in prison in order to study his brain. And, you know, that was someone else where that man had a wife and kids. No one knew what he was doing. So the violence that we live with can be very blatant and all around us, or it could be very secretive. So you can approach it in, you know, if you were writing a story, you could approach it in any kind of way. And like I said, some people are getting very creative. There's a new book out, and I can't remember the name, where I think it came out in 2025, where the point of view was from the dog. So to think of things like, I love the John Wick series, so I will say that. The poor dog is the catalyst in the first movie, and then he gets another dog. So if you were to imagine these violent crimes going on all around from the perspective of the dog, it, you know, what makes sense, what doesn't make sense. And, you know, I've also gone to Crime Con a bunch of times, and they have their police dogs there at some of them. The Orlando Canine Unit was at the Orlando Crime Con. I got to see the Denver and Aurora canines in Denver, and you know, to put your mind into the dog and wonder what on earth the dog is thinking. They know who their person is. They know their commands only from that person. So if somebody else tried to shout them out, it's kind of like, you can know the words. It's not going to do anything for that dog. They know who their person is. And, you know, and you can have a lot of fun with it. There's like a lot of canine cute movies out. Like Tom Hanks was in one. I think Jim Belushi, I think, was in one. So like I said, I write about my cats every week. It might seem a little violent to some people. They're just like, oh my gosh, if a cat, you know, catches a mouse, and I'm like, okay, you're eating a hamburger right now. I don't want to hear it. Like, I'm practically vegan, but I don't take the violence against animals too far. I try to prepare people, and also when I'm posting these online, I'll even make sure I put a little warning at the top if this involves an animal injury, if there's something that could be considered gruesome, like a body. I put an accordion fold on the post, so you only see it if you expand it. And that's happened a lot with, you know, dead birds. Either the stray cats are getting them, or we've had these terrible cases of them flying into the windows, and then we just find them dead on the patio. So, you know, we had to put up stuff against the windows that they would stop literally killing themselves in the windows. And we are so desensitized to human violence that the animal violence seems to bother people a lot more. So you can either be graphic with it, or you can pull back and kind of put yourself in someone else's. Like I said, I try to sometimes think of like, how does a 5-year-old want to talk about death or something? And that's how I get through the comics. I try to keep my comics lighter. So if anybody has any questions, yeah?
How long does it usually take generally to write a book?
To write a book, it depends on how much time you have in a day, because when I wrote those 5 books, and they're different lengths, there's 3 that are more traditional length, like 200 and something pages, and then I have the shorter books. I'd say I give about a year, because when I'm in a zone, I'll do writing every day time, but my schedule was also different when I did those. And then when I take a break and go back to edit, I don't necessarily get to it every day, because I'm still trying to put out these weekly stories. So my Thursdays, I specifically take time for writing to get out my Monday story.
Do you
No, I published myself those novels. I've been published in other books in anthologies. So there's one that was dedicated to a group called Protect that helps victims, child victims. And so that was 2 huge anthologies. So I was in the 2nd volume of Protect. I don't remember who the publisher was on that. The anthology that I have on my table about Athena Voltaire, that's my friend's character. And that was published, I think, by Dark Horse or Action Lab. It was one of the comic book publishers at the time because she started in comics. And the character just, he wanted a prose version. And I'm going to be in the next Upper New York Sisters in Crime anthology. So I'm not sure how they do their publishing. They might. Sisters in Crime is a writing group. So they're global, and there are chapters all over the world. And there's the New York, New Jersey, Connecticut chapter. There's a South Jersey chapter. There's the Hudson River, Upper Hudson, I think they call it, chapter. And then there, California, Australia, all over the place. Yeah, we do Zooms. And but they also have grants. They have so writers of color. There's the Eleanor Taylor Bland grant every year. So for an emerging writer of color who's interested, that it's not just for women. It started as a support to get women authors because they weren't getting picked up, except in romance. That was like the only place where women thrived was either romance or fantasy, and a lot of times even the fantasy authors used their initials. Things are changing, but so Sisters in Crime, they have grants, they have sometimes write-ins and workshops that they'll schedule all over. I just went to a book launch for someone in the Hudson City group. So she wrote very unusual true crime books. She started the first one with New England, the second one, the Mid-Atlantic, as a sort of like a travel guide of crime spots. So places where crimes happen, but also final resting places of the victims. Yeah, so she spent a lot of time researching for that. It's very interesting, especially when you're going through and you find your town listed, and it's like, oh, what happened here? So it does, I try to crank out a draft in a couple months, if possible. I'm older now. I'm tired. As we were talking about, I'm tired longer, so I'm not putting in 12-hour days anymore. If I can write for an hour or two, that's awesome. That's a win. That's 2 hours that I didn't have put in. So I'm always just happy with anything that I get done. Yes. So, and that's the thing. Sometimes when you get really stuck, but my very first one, cardiac arrest, I was so stuck on how to solve the mystery. And then I was watching like Good Morning America with my folks, and there was a gadget that was featured that you can attach to your phone and see like where you have drafts, like the hot thermal imaging, the hot spots and the cold spots. And I realized that was the solution to my crime. So I was like, oh, I can't believe this. This 5-minute segment has just solved everything I've been stewing on for months. So, sometimes great stuff like that happens, and then you can't wait to get back to it. When I'm doing things like the comics, it takes longer sometimes because if I have to wait for an artist and they have a day job, then things come in pretty slowly. But I worked with one artist recently on my second issue, and it's his full-time job. He loves work. He banged it out in 2 weeks, and that was like extraordinary, especially for the quality. So that was remarkable. But yeah, and then also if I've hired an editor on one book, it's not one that's out yet. So that cost a lot of money. And then, you know,
You find these days.
I use a website called Reedsy, Reedsy, and they have editors, designers, anybody, different copy editors. So if you're looking for somebody who is also looking for work, what you do is you create like your project, and you can invite people to basically bid and see what their rates are. So I found a woman who worked, you know, we seemed to agree on things and work well together. I liked what she had to say. It was worth it. But in, you know, in other worlds, I'm not sure, but a lot of it's pretty online these days. But if you get into a group like Sisters in Crime, there's also, they have a community forum. So besides meeting up in person, you can post online and say, you know, can anybody recommend a proofreader? Can anybody, you know, and you can, because a lot of times personal references make a big difference. And I know those people appreciate it, just like in corporate work, personal reference goes a long way. So, or, you know, if you need a plumber, anything, a personal reference makes a big difference. Questions? Any other questions? I promise I am not a murderer. I just think about it all the time. If people could trust Jessica Fletcher, then she was what I wanted to be when I grew up, so. All right, thanks for coming.